Boruto is back with chapter 60 of the manga. We unfortunately did not get to cover chapter 59 on the channel due to complications of our recent move. It was a difficult time making videos, but we did our best. Unfortunately, we missed that last chapter, but we're back now, thankfully, for chapter 60. In the previous chapter, we had Amato suggest and at the same time attempt to manipulate Kawaki into regaining the karma's power through scientific means. A karma that would be purely a weapon similar to Code's white karma. Kawaki would turn this idea down, but it was clear Amato was now in his head. In chapter 59, we were also introduced to Ada's brother, Daemon, a child with horrifying abilities that could easily end any man that attacks him. And we saw this play out when the guards of Boro's facility tried taking him out. One after the other, they essentially killed themselves because whatever they intended to do to Daemon, they ended up doing back to themselves. The stronger the intent to kill, the more powerful the reaction. It was a solid chapter where suspicion of Amato grew and the enemy became more terrifying. And now we have chapter 60, which opens with a vibrant cover starring Daemon himself. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe to Plot Armor with notifications on. We upload just about daily and would love to have you join in on our discussions. Now, let's get into chapter 60. It began with a discussion of Code's abilities among some of the top ranking members in Konoha. His main ability would be described as claw marks, a kind of marker to designate locations he can instantaneously travel to, fairly compared to Minato's flying Raijin. And it's with this jutsu that Code is able to travel where the Ten Tails is. It'd be reported that none of these markers have been found in Konoha. It's unknown how long they were there, but 4 were spotted near the outer walls. And I guess that confirms we have no way of telling how long Code's markers have been placed. Something that certainly makes the job of those trying to defend Konoha much more difficult. They currently have teams of 3 watching each location, the standard squad size, and they also have others searching for more markers. After all, they cannot afford to miss any. Shikamaru would think ahead as usual and point out that it's possible the markers are decoys meant to spread Konoha's manpower thin, and he's very right about this. If it's not clear already, Code definitely has the advantage in this conflict. We'd also learn here during all of this that while Code hasn't been spotted yet, these markers have been showing up in other villages as well. It's crazy how even with all these villages working together, Code isn't even close to being caught. He hasn't even been spotted. Sai would reveal they've managed to capture and interrogate many outer members of Kara, but this was fruitless because they're simply foot soldiers with no information of importance. The Leaf's best option would be to simply keep an eye on the claw marks, as well as Naruto, Boruto, Sasuke, Amato, and Kawaki. Those individuals are the targets, and so it makes sense to, in a way, focus on the treasure. The hunter, Code, will appear eventually. From there, we'd find Kawaki on top of the Hokage statues, overlooking a view we've known since the beginning of the Naruto series. Kawaki looked troubled, as in the corner of his eyes he could spot several ninja keeping tabs on him. He was being watched, just as Sai and Shikamaru had just previously discussed. Not because they fear him or have any issue with Kawaki himself, but more so for his protection. We then thankfully go back to Amato and Sumire, where Amato would be further questioned by the now concerned and suspicious Sumire. She'd ask him what he plans to have Kawaki do once the karma is restored. Again, remember, by scientific means, Amato can recreate the karma to be purely a weapon. First would come silence following this question, but Amato would then speak. He explained that he wasn't exactly trying to keep the subject a secret, but it was a personal matter. It's something he plans to discuss with Kawaki, but would rather not share with Sumire. Amato would then essentially explain that her fears are nonsensical because he has zero intention of doing Konoha wrong. This didn't satisfy Sumire, and what stands out to me here is he says Konoha. He doesn't mention Kawaki here initially, despite the matter being directly related to him. Now, noticing a pot in the room, Sumire would begin to feel more uneasy. Her questioning would continue, and at this point, I can't be the only one thinking Sumire may end up popped for all her questioning. It's often that character that digs too deep that ends up getting laid out, I guess you could say. In response to questions about the container, Amato would tell her to leave, for he is quite busy. Strange because he could of course simply answer the question and have it be over with, but anyway, Amato would remind her again that he doesn't plan to do Konoha any wrong, stating that in fact the opposite was true. Assuming he's being honest here with Sumire and Katasuke, who he claims to have ran this plan by, it was in fact true that this was not a real secret, referring to the pod. Amato would state that this one should become a powerful ally for Konoha. Sumire would be puzzled by these words as she looked at the pod, and the story made its transition. Now, most likely this pod contains another cyborg-like creation of some kind. We saw the enemy increase their members with Ada and Daemon, so it makes sense our side increases and bolsters in some way as well. This reveal should be super interesting. We've been seeing crazy abilities through Ada and her brother, so I'm down to see more of that sort of thing. How about you guys? Are you into these busted abilities? Let us know in the comments. Back to the chapter, we would return to the location of the enemy in the snow-filled region. Code would be dealing with Diamond's shenanigans. I suppose like Ada, you could even say they became friends. More like Code is on Diamond's good side, but hey, something like friends. Diamond, still on Code, would now get bored of this and take notice of Bug and would attempt to ride on his back the same way he had just done to Code. Diamond would land on Bug, but in the process they both end up on the ground. Now yelling, Diamond would ask Bug where he was attempting to sneak off to. Bug could only think to himself that this is why he hates Diamond. Just then, we could see Code's signature claw marks slash through Diamond and Bug, or at least try, as it appeared to break midway through. This kind of shook Diamond as Code looked on with a blank expression. He'd basically just tried to attack Diamond. He'd think to himself on what had just happened. Diamond's reflection was instantaneous, and based on Diamond's reaction, it appears his ability is automatic and out of his own control. Diamond was pissed and confused, rightfully so. Code would then rescue Bug from the torment that comes with being the target of Diamond's attention, and Code would then explain his actions by saying this was just his way of showcasing his ability. We then get a new detail about this ability. While Code himself can go back and forth between his markers, he can only bring others one at a time, and I imagine that'll somehow become relevant later. Diamond would understand now and respond well to this. Bug would say thank you to Code for saving him, but Code would brush this off and say he was merely checking out Diamond's ability. Now having showcased and explained his ability, Code would ask Diamond to do the same, and he'd begin to do so before being cut off by Ada. She'd signal for him to be quiet and to not reveal his cards so readily. Code would question if this was Ada showing that she doesn't trust him, but she'd explain that Code knows all he needs to for the time being. Ada would go on to say that she just met him and some time needs to pass before she can show him everything. And now this is where Code would have to question if she has even more abilities she has yet to demonstrate as well. And of course, she wouldn't answer this directly. Instead, she would say, wouldn't that be interesting? Diamond would yell out now that he doesn't mind telling Code, but Ada told him not to, so he couldn't now. And this is super exciting because it means there is more to these characters' potential than we originally thought, and they're already pretty busted, so I can't imagine what else is in store. Back in Konoha, Kawaki would be at a convenience store, shopping while others made note of his presence and began staring. The words of Shikadai and Ishiki would ring in his head. He was questioning whether he belongs here in Konoha. Meanwhile, Boruto, back at the Uzumaki residence, was taking the medicine prescribed by Amato. 2 a day for a week. At this point, but he'd experienced no change. And with that, Boruto would have to wonder if they were working. As he pondered this, Hinata would come asking for Kawaki. He was missing, and this was strange because he'd never missed dinner before. Back at the HOKAGE faces, Kawaki would return with a drink and a snack. He looked sad. As he reached for the drink, Naruto would appear and question if this was Kawaki's dinner. He knew Hinata had made dinner, so he had to wonder what Kawaki was doing up here eating this. Not looking at Naruto's face, Kawaki would say he's bored of the dinners. But this was an obvious lie to Naruto because Kawaki had never once not cleared his plate before. Now, changing the topic, Kawaki would look down on Konoha and say that he really likes this spot on the Hokage's faces. He likes the view, the perfect place to gaze upon the village protected by Naruto. But he believed and would say that there isn't a place for him anywhere in this village. Naruto looked sad hearing this, but Kawaki would go on and explain that he knows it's no one's fault, and would explain that he's a troubled outsider who wandered into this trouble-free place. This is all sad to see, but this is also a really interesting development for Kawaki. He'd go on to say that honestly, he was really cocky before, and that he can laugh at himself now. Ending with saying Ishiki was right. Just then, very swiftly, Naruto would put Kawaki on his shoulder, while Kawaki of course resisted at least a little bit. Naruto would say that he doesn't care about Ishiki or Jigen right now, and then tell Kawaki they're going home. Ending by addressing Kawaki as his stupid son. And man, that hit right in the heart. You can't see a scene like that and feel nothing. Hearing those words widened Kawaki's eyes, and they went home. Everyone was at the dinner table waiting. It was a welcome party. They'd never had the chance to do it previously for Kawaki, and right at the center of the table was the flower vase Kawaki had broken and also fixed for Himawari previously. Kawaki was clearly moved by this, and at that, it was time to eat. At some point in the dinner, Kawaki would tell Himawari she should use the new vase he bought for her because this cracked up one is ugly, but she would explain that the cracked one is more precious to her now, which makes sense because a lot of effort went into putting it back together. She comes off very cute in this scene, and honestly we just need more Himawari in the manga in general. Will it ever come? I have no idea, but would love that. Kawaki would reply to this and say that both Himawari and Boruto are weird. Boruto would try to get him to stop and say that he had a gift for him. Ironically, Boruto would tell Kawaki he needs to work on his attitude, which is funny coming from the guy that in the beginning of the manga had a huge attitude. Boruto would pull out the gift. It was a leaf ninja headband. Both Kawaki and Naruto would gaze at it. Initially, Kawaki would kind of push back, saying that isn't this something special for Boruto, and also reminding Boruto that he's not officially a shinobi, to which Boruto would respond stating that Kawaki has started his training, it doesn't matter if it's official or not because him, Sarada, and Mitsuki consider him a teammate. The headband could be seen as a formality of some kind. Kawaki would still turn this down though, this time saying that Boruto would be left without a headband. But Boruto would bring up the fact that he still has Sasuke's, ending by saying it can be a loan. Kawaki can return it when he becomes an official ninja and of course gets his own. Naruto would approve and Hinata would encourage Kawaki to try it on, and so then we'd get an image of Kawaki with the headband on his forehead. While I wouldn't say it looks bad, it certainly does look odd, and the characters would kind of all share this same sentiment. It just didn't suit him at all. Himawari would suggest wearing it around his neck, which certainly was an improvement, and that was the end of the dinner, at least from what we saw. Later that night, Kawaki would sit next to Naruto with the headband in his hand, and the two would have a talk. Naruto would remind him that this family welcomes him to stay as long as he'd like. This is his place, and if Kawaki can't share that feeling, then it means as Hokage, Naruto himself has failed. There'd be silence for a bit, but then the topic of code would come up. Naruto would acknowledge that the search was rough, but let Kawaki know they'll find him. Before going to sleep, Naruto would say that Konoha is a place where everyone, even someone like Kawaki, can live at ease, or else there was no point in him becoming Hokage. And when you remember how Naruto was treated as a child, it makes sense for him to deeply value equal treatment and a village being welcoming. Seeing Kawaki feel rejected and out of place is like seeing himself as a child again. In the house, in his own room, Boruto would look at the pills he's been taking simultaneously while all this was going on. And lastly, we'd see Boruto look at the karma. Back to Kawaki, we would see Kawaki wondering if Konoha was the place he really belonged. And then he'd look at the place his karma once used to reside, remembering the words of Amato as he did this. But in the end, he'd brush that aside and remember he doesn't need the karma. There's still one thing he can do to protect the leaf and Naruto, and that was the end of the chapter. A really solid one despite the lack of real action. There were a lot of emotional moments and developments on both sides. I must admit I like the opposition more without Daimon, but I'm still holding out hope that I come to like him later on. Ada and him are now basically revealed to have more in store than we've seen, so there is that to look forward to. Their abilities are insane already, so I can't imagine what else could be going on with them. As for the Konoha side of things, you gotta really wonder what Amato is doing, what is in that pod, and what could be the personal matter he has with Karma. So many questions, and we have a whole month to discuss and speculate what will come next. So in the comments, be sure to let us know what you think and what type of Boruto content you'd like to see. Again, we apologize for missing the previous chapter, but we're here now and making Boruto content still. At the end of the chapter, we got some really interesting words from Kawaki that surely you guys have your thoughts on. Personally, my thought goes to sacrifice of some sort. Maybe Kawaki thinks that if he can sacrifice and give himself over to Code, maybe Code will forget about Naruto and the leaf. I can't imagine what else he meant by those words at that moment, but let us know what you think. It's either that, or he's simply referring to training more to become stronger without the karma. But yeah, that is it for the chapter. We hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you haven't already, be sure to drop a like and subscribe to Plot Remote notifications on to never miss an upload. We upload just about daily and we'd love to have you join in on our discussions. And if you'd like to support the channel even further, check out our Patreon link in the description below and follow us on Instagram and Twitter, where we keep you up to date on all the latest and greatest anime and manga news, have discussions, and even do giveaways. All that and more over at PlotArmorYT on Instagram and Twitter. Until next time, keep that plot armor on you. I'm KJ. Have a great day. Goodbye.